Happy Freaky Friday from the Podcast Daily. This is Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We have seen one practice. We've thought about it. We've kicked around the observations. And now we got to regroup and think about what we want to see later on today.
Yeah. I want to see Carson Hinsman out on the field and how that alters the rotation.
Did you just go straight to offensive line play?
Yeah, I did. I'm a cliche.
It's Friday. He wants to do what makes him happy.
It's hard though, right? Like it is not a time, I think, to be like evaluating the offensive line necessarily. I think mostly we're just trying to figure out kind of pecking order kind of stuff. And if you were to, drop out of the sky from another planet and know nothing about Ohio State football, show up on day one, you think like, well, Tigger Shabola is this team's starting right guard based on everything.
But if you didn't know anything about football, you wouldn't even know what a starting right guard is.
That is true. That's a great point. First, you would have to educate yourself on what football is and then come to Ohio State practice.
You'd say, listen, alien, you want big, bad dudes.
That's
and
right.
They'd say, that's the one I want.
That's the one right there. Yeah. By the way, have you met Marvin Harrison Jr.? He's from our planet. Carson, I think, should change the dynamic based on everything we heard kind of in the offseason and especially at Big Ten Media Days from Ryan Day. So I'm on alert for what that looks like. And there's some stuff they do with these split field things too. Like when they maybe feel like we're catching on to something a little too much, they'll mix it up. And I don't know, Josh Simmons will be playing next to Austin Saravelt instead of Donovan Jackson on Friday. So you can't read too much into it, but I am looking forward to any changing dynamics at right guard, assuming they have all hands on deck on Friday.
You think they're paying attention to what we learn and don't learn?
Someone is.
Someone is. Berm, what do you think?
Do you guys... I'm not going to go off on a tangent here.
Here we go. Freaky Friday, baby.
It's totally unlike you.
Do you think it is a sign of anything that we should be paying attention to that after Thursday's practice, there's nobody on the Monarch machine?
Oh.
No.
You don't think... I'm looking at the machine, and I'm wondering, that's interesting.
They go in, they get treatment, they do meetings, and then they're going to be back out here. We have to be off the field soon so they can come back out here on Friday morning.
Okay, so
that's the routine.
It was just kind of struck me. There was not a single practice in the last 2 years where Marvin Harrison was not out here after practice.
Yeah, he was also getting paid by the company that builds the machine.
I bet you they paid Jeremiah Smith. Okay, that was just I was just, how I do sometimes.
Okay. So you are concerned leaving day one.
Do the receivers have the right work ethic?
I mean,
yes.
They probably do. I'm just saying, it was like a weird vibe. Like, that hasn't happened in a while.
Okay.
It means nothing. As we guys have just said, it means nothing. So I'm just.
There are other ways to get good at playing football.
Those are straws, buddy. I'm just grasping them.
Why are there so many?
The straws are everywhere. I would be interested to see offensive line and defensive linemen play against one another in some way. Yeah. And I know these are the acclimation days, and you're not going to go full pads or hit each other. I just don't understand the notion of splitting them up and saying, okay, defensive line, you're going to work on avoiding medicine balls, and offensive line, you're like you could work on sets and different,
I think they were doing pass rush stuff on Thursday, but we couldn't see it because the 7-on-7 was happening in front of us, and then they were behind.
When I was watching 7-on-7, the defensive line was over here, and the offensive line was all the way at the other end of the field. Which, whatever. Those are things that I'm like, I don't run a football practice, so I want to be clear.
Though.
But I just wonder, is that standard? Is that standard to have them all separated, or do most places have them competing against each other?
I agree with you. I'd like to see them kind of get in each other's face a little bit too. It's day one, maybe day two. That's time for that.
Again, I'm just spitballing. Yeah. Okay, I'm just grasping. Because what are we going to see out here on Friday that we didn't really see on Thursday? They're going to do the exact same thing. So the question is our guys going to be consistent? Are we going to see?
I think that's a huge thing.
Are we going to see Will Howard continue to elevate because 100%. He was so much better on Thursday than he looked in the spring? Are we going to see the receiver? Is Carnell Tate going to still be that guy? Consistency is something that you just have in mind. That's what you need to see every day. But as far as the actual breakdown of practice, what's going to be substantially different?
Probably not a lot, but when we're looking at the position battles, I think that's what we mentioned on Thursday in Snap Judgments. It's like, will Tigger Shabola continue to go everywhere that Josh Fryer does? Well, I think we can assume that will be the case with Josh Simmons and Donovan Jackson. So will you see that already early in camp? That's going to set the tone. I know that Ryan Day's talking about there being 25 practices and they can do whatever they want, but they don't need that much time to evaluate the few spots here. In my
You
opinion,
also don't want to waste any of the practice.
that's what I mean. You can't. This is a team that wants to win a national championship, and by no means do you have to do that on August 2nd and like nail down your entire depth chart. But if you don't need to needlessly create drama or uncertainty at positions either.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like if you're going to do the split field thing, like I would like Will Howard and probably Julian Sain to always be with like a Mecca Carnell and Jeremiah Smith.
So here's why. I didn't want to do this again, but why I'm so annoyed by watching the split squad stuff is that only happened on offense. The entire first team defense is going against a Frankenstein version of Ohio State's offense.
Maybe that'll be different on Friday.
That's why I would love for that to change. I know that it won't, and I know that this is only 4 days, and it's not going to probably determine anything for the length of the season. But I know that people paid to watch practice on Thursday and Friday, and they will on Saturday and Sunday, and we got to watch it. And like, I assume that people, including the team, want to see Ohio State at its best. And Jack Sawyer against a third-string tackle with walk-on wide receivers and tight ends, and Will Howard in the backfield having to just slide to the ground because there's nothing that's making any sense on offense is crazy to me. But I know that there's a good reason, and I did ask Ryan Day about that in May because I don't want to just criticize something that may not actually mean anything in the grand scheme without understanding why they want to do it. And he said it again on Thursday that they got twice as many reps by doing it this way. I'm really more curious than ever about why that doesn't apply to the defense and why they're only doing that on offense. Because last year there were practices and Muka's coming off the field saying, we got to get it together. It's not you.
Yeah, the offense is being put at a disadvantage.
Like a dramatic disadvantage.
Maybe it's on purpose. I don't know.
Could be.
Keep us off the scent.
It didn't work though.
No, I mean, just to get, I just think that you're not actually helping anybody when we had this conversation last year. Like, you don't help the third string offensive tackle by letting him get destroyed by Jack Sawyer over and over again. You don't help.
You don't help Jack Sawyer by
right. You don't help Will Howard's confidence in the pocket when he has no time to do anything other than take a snap and fall down. Like, those things are real. But again, it's like, this is going to happen for a couple days, and then we're never going to be in here, and then they're going to play real football. So
I know.
But it is confusing because your point is 100% correct. Like, they're not doing it on defense.
Like, at all. Other than letting Jack and JT get a few reps off on the sideline so that Mitchell Melton can work in at defensive
which is something that they need to do in the season. So, that's not I don't think that's a thing where they're like, well, we better just do this for appearances. I think they're like, Mitch is going to be running the jack or whatever that position's called, and so we need to
unicorn.
Yeah. Well, that I expected to see it. I was braced for it. I was trying not to overreact to it, but I this year it was stranger to me because I looked out and there were no other positions on defense where there was any rotation going on at all. And on offense, it's like, I don't know what this is. It made it so you couldn't even tell what they were trying to do.
I will say, last year when they were doing that, depending on which field you were watching, like, there were times where the offense couldn't do anything because the offensive line was getting destroyed. I don't know that I felt that on Thursday. And
it was better.
I don't know if that's like improved depth on the O-line or what, but it's still not great. I agree with everything you're saying. I would prefer like good on good the whole time, or like ones versus twos even, not like half of ones and some threes versus some fours and some fives. They even had
Crenshaw and Travion on the same field.
Yeah, but I actually...
So why not split those two up?
Yeah, no, you're right. But I thought the O-line collectively handled that situation much better than they did last year.
I've been asked by a lot of people in like my offline life, like, how worried are you about the offensive line? And I have I'm not really worried about this offensive line in the way that I think it's being discussed, and maybe I should be, but I've seen significant improvement from them at the end of last year into spring, and then even on Thursday. They just look much, much better. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying not to gloss it over, but I don't have like a giant concern about them. I think Josh Fryer and Josh Simmons are, like, when you talk about tackle tandems in the country, there might not be 5 tackle tandems better than them, which I don't think anyone's talking about. Who's got better pair of tackles?
I think it's just difficult to wrap your mind around, and that they're going to be better.
There's not 20. Yeah.
that a year ago, that combination was not one of the top 10 or top 20 in the country, maybe, although probably better than they get credit for. But like, we get so hyper focused on that. It's like, you forget that they will take all that experience and they come back. And most teams are not going to bring back both of their starting tackles with another year of experience, physical development, understanding the offense, and all those other things. Like that's a huge advantage for Ohio State. If you're going to hold it against Josh Fryer that he gave up 6 sacks a year ago, and you don't, that's fine. You're welcome to do so. If you're not going to be open to the idea that he can grow from that experience and that he has the physical tools to be a good enough right tackle,
Yep.
I mean, that's the world that I'm going to live in. If I'm wrong about that, I'm wrong. It's the same thing with Josh Simmons. Like, if you don't believe that someone with a full year now of starting in the Big Ten can't eliminate some of the penalties or maybe knock off 3 or 4 pressures, of which he didn't give up that many, that's the evolution of playing the game. You don't just go out there and not get any better from playing. Like, you may not become a first-round draft pick, but I don't think that's what Ohio State needs from Josh Simmons or Josh Fryer. If they are second-day draft picks at tackle, then that's going to be a damn good offensive line.
Draft picks, period. I think a tackle might be good enough. Ryan Day said on Thursday that Josh Simmons does things that few players at his position can. There's a lot of hype behind that dude, I think. And I clearly was not there, I don't even know, like 2 months ago. I'm kind of there now because I just keep hearing it, so why not buy into it a little bit? So I think the tackle tandem stands to be pretty good. Yeah. Like, if there's anything I'm concerned about with the offensive line, it's obviously figuring out right guard, but it's like tackle depth. But like, I'm with Berm. Like, I feel like the concern with the O-line is like at an 8, just sort of like out there in the world, and I'm not nearly there. Yeah.
And again, it's not to suggest that Josh Simmons is going to be an all Big Ten or a first round pick, but like, the guys here don't have to keep talking about him. They don't have to keep praising him.
Especially the coaching staff.
Right.
That's not the way they talked about him a year ago.
They don't have to be like, oh, you guys should see this guy, because that's what people are saying now. I mean, I heard that a little bit from people last year who said that they thought he could develop into this, which is why I said last year, like, I think he will be a day 2 pick in the next draft. But he's certainly elevating. And when you look at this offensive line now, let's say Carson Hinsman is the starter. Okay, maybe it's not him, maybe it's Tiger Shabola, but you have 5 guys who were starters a year ago in that case.
Yeah.
You know, obviously not 5 guys that were starters here, but you'd have 5 starters. And people are worried about it, and I think they're worried just because there's no Paris Johnson. But like, there aren't many Paris Johnsons.
There are not a lot of Paris Johnsons.
So like, that shouldn't be the expectation. Like, you need to have all Big Ten caliber offensive linemen at Ohio State, and they have them.
Yeah. They do.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay. I don't think that there's cause for concern about that. I just think they should get some time working together. Get a little cohesion going, a little chemistry.
Yeah, I agree with that. We can move off that for a second.
Let's do it.
What we want to see more of on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I like James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon more and more every time I see them. And Sam Williams-Dixon in particular looked very explosive on Thursday. And I think I think that's just a tandem that I'm going to like make sure I spend some time watching every opportunity we get, because I think their roles are going to be important, because Quinshon Judkins and Trayvon Henderson can't take every carry for this team. Ryan Day has said multiple times both those freshmen need to play. I thought both showed up in the spring game. That's sort of like one step in this process, but they're out on the field on Thursday, and it kind of looks like they picked right back up where they were after those practices. So I'm excited about those two, and we'll see if we have an opportunity later on in camp to watch like 2-3 weeks from now if they can sustain that, because it's a different beast. But I thought they looked really good on day 1, and I'm excited to see what they do on day 2.
They're in a very unique position for running backs that nobody really expected to be needed this year.
Yeah, they did a number of things too, like catching out of the backfield that are enticing. I think we thought that Ohio State would do a little bit more of that last year with Trayvon, and it didn't necessarily. Did slightly more, I guess, an uptick.
A little bit, yeah.
I think that's the next thing that Chip Kelly can also do. We've spent a lot of time talking about the power rushing attack, but even just using your running backs in different ways, whether that's screens or wheels, whatever, out of the backfield. I think all 4 of these guys have the skill set that would allow that to happen.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah, and Sam was a guy who was very overlooked coming out of Buckeyes had 3 running back commitments, and everyone was just sort of, we don't know if this guy can even play running back. Clearly, he can play running back.
I mean, I expected when I saw him in the spring to like just look like a receiver who was trying to play running back, and maybe he did a little bit. Not now. Now it looks like a running back.
What do you think the most interesting thing you heard from Ryan Day on Thursday was, Berm?
Oh boy. I go straight to recruiting because that's what I was interested in.
That's fine.
The discussion about not having an end of July event. I don't think it's going to make people feel better about the reason Ohio State didn't have it, just so the coaches could have more days off. But I'm also kind of split on it. Like, I appreciate that Ryan Day cares about the quality of life for his coaches, and I understand starting Thursday through February they won't have a day off again.
Right. Yeah.
So I understand it, but I also get a little bit squeamish when I know that Georgia's not taking a day off and Dan Lanning's not taking the day off. Ohio State has the number one recruiting class in the country. They feel pretty good about where things are. I think the interesting thing is when he's asked about how the scholarship numbers and the change in scholarship numbers may impact this class of 2025. Like, they have 24 commitments right now, but there's really only 4 or 5 guys left on the board.
I think that conversation, not just for future recruiting, also applies to Ryan Day seems really adamant about planning the number at 120 for roster size. And I don't know that we spent a great deal of time about talking about that, Bill. Like, that's coming with the, NCAA future legislation, like getting to 105 scholarship players. And there's concern about like removing walk-ons from that. And Ryan Day, more than anybody else, I think, is like, well, look at what happened on Thursday. We had split squad stuff. We couldn't have done that if we didn't have 120 people out there. He's really digging in on that in a way that I think a lot of coaches are, but maybe not with the platform that he has. And I don't know that that's a fight that the coaches are going to be able to win.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that 120 sounds like the right number to get through a camp, but like, it's not the NFL. You can't just like cut dudes unless you can find 15 guys who are just willing to come out here and mix it up in camp and then not do anything with the team the rest of the year.
Well, that's the thing. If you have 105 scholarships, you could still have 15 walk-ons or scout team players. Or
and I think that's probably a workable number. I don't know.
Especially for a program that really does rely on walk-ons for a lot of stuff. I mean, we're looking at the wide receivers on Thursday, and there's like 5 of them out there that are walk-ons, and they're all pretty darn good players.
They were good players, too.
Yeah. So, Jude Mitchell had a couple nice plays.
Yeah, I mean, Jude Mitchell.
David Adolph had a really good block that got Keenan Bailey fired up.
I mean, and who's the other one from Cincinnati Princeton?
The freshman Dorian Williams.
84.
He looked really good.
Yeah.
I guess he was a recruitable prospect. Like, I think Vanderbilt was involved with him. Not sure exactly what happened there. That was the first I'd ever.
It's Vanderbilt. No thanks.
He said Xavier Johnson did this from Cincinnati. I can do this too.
Yeah.
So there are still kids around the state who will do that for Ohio State.
Yeah.
So it
is odd to deny. Like, I don't know why you would want to deny guys. I get like there's weird kind of semantics with like revenue sharing and having to reconfigure the model, but I don't like progressing toward a situation where like maybe Xavier Johnson doesn't get that shot, right? Because you're not going to give Xavier Johnson a scholarship off the rip, right? But
the revenue sharing, this is where things are going to get really convoluted. Not something Ryan Day talked about on Thursday, but the revenue sharing is you're talking like $10 million a year for football probably, and that's not going to pay for this roster.
No.
So what that $10 million is going to basically be pushed toward the bottom third of the roster, and then the other NIL stuff that is happening in the world of college football is still going to be vital and necessary for the top half of the roster. So you get that 105 to 120 players in that pool of money, which because you're not going to have the scholarship.
Tell me I could be a millionaire if I'm a walk-on?
Well, not a millionaire.
I got 4 years of eligibility left.
I'm not sure you're good at math.
$10 million for 15 additional scholarship spots?
I'm saying the bottom.
Okay.
I'm saying the bottom half of the roster.
Got
Those
it.
guys are
He's saying 50,000.
Got it. Never mind.
Those guys are going to get something, but they're not going to get the thing.
Everything except that final piece was right there for you. So close. All right,
you can still walk around if you want.
Okay.
What was
the next series? What was the Bill trying to become a walk-on?
What was the most interesting thing you guys heard Ryan Day say on Thursday?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Okay. That was nice. In unison.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time together.
I thought
harmonizing.
I think it was part of an answer to a Tiger Shabola question, and Brian Day talking more about like physicality and wearing teams down. Just like further reinforces for me that this team's going to hang its hat on running the football. Like they're going to throw it. The receivers are great. I don't think they're going to struggle to throw the ball, but Ryan Day in Indianapolis talked about like finding this team's fastball, and I think the fastball is going to come via the run game.
I think I mentioned it on Thursday. It's right along with what Bill's talking about, that he caught himself when he was about to like say that Tegra was leading in the guard job, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he wasn't going to say that, but that was like everything leading up to it was before he didn't let Tegra's name come off.
It was everything you would say about a guy's going to start, and he stopped.
And that was the thing I thought was most interesting. He also talked at length about Will Howard's physical transformation. Now, he didn't bring it up unprompted. He was asked about it because we saw him, and it wasn't just the way that Will Howard threw it, but also the way he looked physically, that they – and Ryan Day seemed like giddy to talk about it. He's like, oh yeah, we challenged him in a big way once he got here, and he went through and dealt with Mick and dealt with nutrition and like did the full body scan and showed him this and that. And it's like, we had him lose weight and then we put on some good weight. So like, he's always been a big physical guy, but he's carrying it in a different way than the version of Will Howard that showed up in January and February. Did that lead to differences in mechanics or accuracy or the velocity on the football? I don't know. It probably didn't hurt. Yeah. But I thought he had a good practice, and then Ryan Day talked about that. And it's like, it's hard to quantify some of that stuff. And it'd be cool if, like in July, when they're putting out all the photos and they wrap up, Nick hands the torch over to the head coaching staff. They like come in and say, here's what we did. Like, this was the goal for all 85 of these guys, and this is where they reached it. And they never will do that, but I think sometimes they talk about players who make those jumps in a way that just like hits a little bit different. And he did that for Ryan Day did that for Will Howard in a way that meant something, I think.
The physical transformation of the quarterbacks, to me, is a sign of two things. That A, the fastball may be the running game, but you can have a 4-seam fastball and a 2-seam fastball. Mm-hmm. And Ohio State's quarterbacks can win games for this team.
A little sync on that.
Thing. Yeah. Beyond that, it shows the difference between the true upper echelon of college football, where Ohio State is, and even a really good program like Kansas State, where you spent 3+ years in a program at Kansas State, and you spent 8 months in a program at Ohio State, and you look like a much now. I'll give him a little, maybe it's baby fat, etc. He's now a man.
Ryan Day did say baby fat. Like, Will Howard's like 20.
Yeah, he's not a baby.
So, like, I think that it really does put on display the difference between the true creme de la creme and everyone else.
Less creme probably gets you
the creme de la creme.
You got to cut the creme out. That's what they told him. Bill, you said something to me a couple of weeks ago that I couldn't get out of my head. There was one throw from Will Howard that was not quite perfectly led for Carnell Tate. It was a little behind. And I don't remember if you were reading it, if you saw somebody else like analytics, but you were like, well, maybe he'll be more accurate when he has better receivers and more separation.
Yeah. He had to fit some balls into some windows last year.
Yeah, to a fullback.
And Kansas State, his best receiver was Ben Sinnott, who's like a fullback / tight end. It's a very different world for him.
So I saw that, and I was like, that might have been the worst throw that Will Howard made. And Carnell Tate was like, sorry, I'm just going to go up and plug this out.
If we go back in time to C.J. Stroud's 2 years at Ohio State, there were a lot of throws that he would make that if he was throwing it to someone else, he'd be like, that throw was terrible. But he's like putting it there because his guys can get it. So once you realize you can do that and you have guys that can make that catch, your life as a quarterback becomes way easier.
Yeah, there's a way to ask Will Howard that question, I think, without being insulting to his former teammates that I would like to get at. Just got to figure out how to formulate the question.
Yeah, I think that's got to be part of it, this conversation. And that's also why when you're talking about going from Thursday to Friday here, you're looking for the consistency. We need to see that multiple days from him. And that ultimately, I think, was what wound up not giving Devin Brown a leg ahead a year ago. Devin Brown had a good practice. Julian Sayin had a good practice. You want them all to back that up. But it feels like that's maybe, if that happens for Will Howard, then the benefit there becomes pretty clear.
Yeah.
You also wonder how much of Devin Brown's inconsistencies a year ago were that he was maybe next to a guy who was inconsistent a lot of the times. And so you don't get you're fueled by competition. And if the better Will Howard is out here, the better Julian Sayin is, the better Devin Brown is, the better Lincoln Keynold is going to be, and the better Aaron Nolan's going to be. So I think the best problem Ohio State can have is that all the quarterbacks end up being pretty good.
There's no downside to that.
No, can't see one.
All right. Well, we'll be watching for that later on today when we get back in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I don't know why we're going to leave it because we're already here. But it's going to be a
We're
great
going to
day.
go get on that Monarch machine just so that someone's using
Berm's
it.
worried about the Monarch getting dusty in there, so we're going to go plug some balls in and run some routes and get ready for day 2 of practice in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for Ohio State. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We'll have some snap judgments for you later. Stay tuned. See you then.